Hello, I'm the Jersey Connoisseur, and today I will be unveiling movies 1981. Let's begin. And first, for anyone new, I'm ranking all the movies that I watched this year. Starting number 90 is a movie called Parkland. I watched this to commemorate the 57th anniversary of the John F. Kennedy assassination, and it's a retelling of that story. And they do a very good job recreating all the events that led up to the assassination and what happened after. And overall, it's it's great in that sense, but it's missing a little bit on the humanity side. Now, I'll admit that they actually do a great job with juxtaposing Lee Harvey Oswald and John F. Kennedy, whose fates intertwine on that unfateful day in Dallas, where when they both end up perishing and ended up being taken to Parkland Hospital, they even though they came from different worldviews and different occupations, at the end of the day, they're both treated impartially as subjects to be salvaged as they are on their deathbed, and it's great to see that in that way, how they show the humanity for those two in particular. Everyone else, though, in the movie kind of feels like a generic Hollywood character, so that's kind of disappointing in a way. There's not really much character development, and as a result, it kind of it becomes cliche in a way. But overall, it's an enjoyable watch, and it does a great job reminiscing of the historical event. Next, we have Crazy Stupid Love. Now this shifts in the way in the other direction, as this movie is a romantic comedy directed by the same duo who just so happened to write Bad Santa, Glenn Ficarra and John Requa, and they do a very good job in this movie. This is one of the best comedies I watched last year. Specifically, what I like about it is how human they made the characters, how they, in all in their own way, have flaws and they work to overcome them. I mean, you look at Steve Carell; he's faced with the impending doom of divorce by his wife of over 20 years, and he grows to become more comfortable in his own skin. While at the same time, he consults this playboy played by Ryan Gosling, who who also develops an arc and becomes this responsible adult who ends up befriending Steve Carell's daughter, and that's interesting to see, to say the least. And Ryan Gosling is very good in this movie, actually, and no surprise that he's not been nominated for an Academy Award the succeeding years after this. But overall, this movie is a very enjoyable watch, and it makes the idea of entertaining in a relationship palatable to the average viewer. So I respect it for that. Next, we have The Irishman. Now, The Irishman will go down in history, at least in my history, as the longest movie I watched this year at 3.5 hours. And let me tell you, it was one roller coaster ride. This movie is like with other Martin Scorsese movies where he likes to focus on mobster movies like The Departed or Gangs of New York. This one is actually a somewhat true story of the life of several gangsters, including Jimmy Hoffa, and it's very interesting story. I think it's very well told, but the thing is, it doesn't need to be 3.5 hours. It probably could be it cut 45 minutes. The movie could be cut, and it would be more watchable. But nonetheless, the performances were outstanding. I particularly like Joe Pesci. He's always good, and Robert De Niro, obviously. So, and they do a good job in retelling the life of Robert De Niro's character specifically, and overall, it was a very good movie and deserving of a Best Picture nomination. And it's just hard to watch in one sitting, and I even struggled to watch it. I had to take increments here and there, but I eventually watched it, and I was satisfied with it. Next, we have a movie that I had little to no expectations for, and completely exceeded them. An American Pickle. Now, when I first saw the trailers, I thought this was going to be one of Seth Rogen's typical uh, comedies, those hangout movies. But no, this movie was actually very deep, surprisingly. Even though it only comes out to less than 90 minutes, it it connects to themes that are relevant to today, such as immigration and how people and how the American dream, how people strive to be successful in the United States. And this is no different. And Seth Rogen's character, while having been trapped and having been trapped in a pickle factory for over 100 years, comes to realize that he can still make something out of his life, and it's really interesting to see. And there are some comedic moments that you have to take with a grain of salt, with it being part of it's trying to relate to the our modern times, and make some political jokes here and there that may not age well, but overall, it's a very it's a surprisingly thought-provoking movie, and it's very funny. And I expect, with particularly coming out of HBO Max, HBO makes some very high quality stuff. Not only the fact that it looked very well professionally shot, but just the story was very well conceived. The premise of this movie is about a Texas businessman who is trying to negotiate a deal in Scotland to generate oil for his business. And as a result, he flies to Scotland to get this deal done, but ends up being ingrained in their way of life, and he becomes very passionate about about Scotland, and it's a very wholesome movie, to say the least, and it connects on the themes of family, and in that way, I really liked it. It was very enjoyable film, to say the least. So as we approach halfway through today's list, next up is Trainwreck. And like with American Pickle, I didn't have huge expectations going into this because it's a comedy. You expect with comedies you're gonna laugh and not much else. But this movie again has a message behind it, and with it being the desire to seek a relationship. It might be struggle at times. Eventually, you'll find the one, and it may not go as smooth sailing. It might not go as smooth sailing as you hoped. You still have that bond at the end of the day. And this movie is no different in and basically that's how the premise of the movie works. Is that Amy Schumer's character has been struggling all her life to find this the one, and who she strives to be like her father, who she admires. And not until she meets Bill Hader does she find this basically perfect guy. And it's really charming to see in that. I think Bill Hader gives a great performance. Amy Schumer's pretty decent too. And how can I forget LeBron James? Exceeded my expectations, and how he is as an actor. Holy, it gives me high expectations going into the Space Jam 2 this year. So regardless, a very enjoyable film, and one which is important to the cause. Directed by proclaimed director Damien Chazelle. And obviously based off the true story of the Apollo 11 moon landing and/or the life of astronaut Neil Armstrong. And the thing is with this movie is that it's a very fascinating story. Don't get me wrong, but the character himself, Neil Armstrong, is kind of mundane, and while they try to make him more interesting, there's not you're going off of real life, and just as a person, no doubt he was talented as a engineer and a pilot, but as a person he was kind of bland, and obviously with the given the having lost his daughter, and this obviously happened in real life, and it's very good motivation for him to seek the desire to live out. And you think back to how much pressure he was under to get up to land on the moon, and you can only watch and be in amazement. It's such an amazingly crafted film. I mean, I wish I could have watched it in theaters. And I can't even imagine what it would be in IMAX. Oh my goodness. So overall, the cast again was very good. Likes of Ryan Gosling again, Jason Clarke, Kyle Chandler, Corey Stoll, and how can I forget Claire Foy gives us a performance. And overall, a great, enjoyable film which I watched to commemorate the moon landing, the Apollo 11 moon landing on July 20th this summer. So, great movie overall. Next, we have Yesterday, a movie about a guy named Himesh Patel gets transported into a reality where the Beatles never existed, and as a result, he is able to exploit this reality through his own memories of their songs and become this super famous artist. And the concept is very interesting. Obviously, he has motivation. I thought it was a cute movie. Obviously, probably not one of Danny Boyle's best movies, but it was still an enjoyable movie in its own right. I think it has to be said that with these kind of uh, biographical films are based off of artists that they're not trying to be historically accurate, and it's not, and by no means is it. And I think that the movie does have some inherent flaws, but it's overall a decent movie watching experience that I would recommend. And the music is it makes you inspires you to listen to the Beatles more, and just it makes you grateful for how we've been exposed to their music. Next, we have another movie based off of a true story. That came out on Netflix this year, Mank. Now, being directed by David Fincher, of whom I watched a couple of his other films this year, I would say this is my least favorite, but it was still a very good movie. And I mean, I should clarify right now that all the movies that are in my top 100 I would highly recommend, and this one's no different. Obviously, based off the true story of screenwriter Herman Mankiewicz, who wrote the screenplay for Citizen Kane, which is regarded as one of the best movies of all time. And one thing I like about this movie is how they play into the trope of it being in black and white, and how they make it seem like you're in the 1940s or 1930s, and it's very interesting to see. I can see why it's maybe not as tolerable for some people because of they may not be aware of what was going on at the time in Hollywood. But I think it's interesting to see these big figures who've been almost immortalized or demonized, I guess, in a way, like William Randolph Hearst portrayed in this movie, and and Orson Welles as well. Whom it's interesting to see how much turmoil that this movie endured, um, and how controversial it was for the time. No other movie was willing to take that bigger risk, and it's very interesting. It does drag in the middle a little bit, but overall, I mean, if you have the attention span, or if you just have the interest in old-timey movies like this. This one reminds me of Ed Wood, for example. Another movie that's portrayed in black and white that plays on the real-life experiences of a actor or screenwriter. And normally you don't really see movies portrayed with the screenwriter's point of view. And this is one is different and it's unique in that way. And I like it. So overall, I would definitely recommend this movie. And last but not least, we're gonna end with a comedy, which is one of my favorite comedies of all time. Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. Where do I start on this movie? It's just so much to say. I mean, the basic premise is about a man who's trying to return to his family for Thanksgiving, but gets sidetracked and by the horrendous weather that he's exposed to, and being unable to use any other way of transportation, befriends this man played by John Candy, and chaos ensues. It basically describe no other way to describe it. And it's just a very wholesome and enjoyable movie. And this is the prototype. When you look at the the genre of road trip movies, this one is the cream of the crop. Everything that can be done in this movie is done to perfection. And John Hughes, he he knew what the audience wanted with these kind of movies, because not only does it have the comedic side to it, there's some hysterically funny moments in this movie, but it also has the dramatic tone to it, particularly with John Candy's character, who's, he might be seen as this annoying sidekick, but he eventually develops an arc. And when we learn at the end that he has no other family to go back for, it's truly heartbreaking. And in that result, I mean, even though it came out in the mid '80s, it staged very well, and it's still relevant to today. And it's just such a wholesome movie at the end of the day. So anyway, that's today's list. Movies 90 to 81. I hope you enjoyed. Leave a like and subscribe if you'd like to see more. And arrivederci.